Hello YouTube. So this video is in reply to one that Rant has just put up. Um, he and you can see the still of it on the screen here. I'll play just a little bit of the video, and then I'll try and explain what Ranty is claiming, and then assess whether what Ranty is claiming actually makes any sense or not.
As you can see, the same vascular that you mentioned here. So we all agree that we're looking at the same place and we're looking at the same spot and we're looking down at the curve that drops on the bridge from 60 foot down to 15 feet. Now, if you was looking along this line of sight and this line of sight, you would have the exact same bullshit curvature that you proclaim is what you're seeing on this image here.
Why would it be exactly the same?
Same.
It have to be the exact same angle,
the exact same, because it starts in exactly the same place. You can see where the curve starts here. You can see where it hits the vascular. You can see exactly what you're doing. You know this place. You've been there before. You know.
Okay, so that's the important part of the video. He spends quite a long time setting it up and then playing the discussion that he's having online there with people who presented Soundly and others who presented some of the evidence for this bridge and causeway. Let's have a proper look at what the images that Soundly has used actually show, and then we'll have a look at what Ranty is claiming. So the location that we're dealing with is, let me just get rid of these for a moment, is Lake Ponchartrain, which is near New Orleans. New Orleans is here in the south, in Louisiana, southern United States, and that's the Mississippi River. This is Lake Pontchartrain, and this is the bridge or causeway across the lake that we are looking at. Now, Soundly took his video and his photographs and so on from a location somewhere near the start of the causeway here. He, I think, explains that on his videos exactly where he was standing, but he was somewhere very, very close to the edge of the causeway here. The causeway itself is almost perfectly level with the water. If you look at the shadow lines running along here, now it's not absolutely clear that all the Google images were taken on the same day, so the shadow length could change, but they give us a good guide. And the shadow at the side of the road here is the same size all the way along, until you get to this point here where there is a slight thickening and then it narrows down again. And if we can put 3D buildings on, if we pop down to ground level about here, will probably do it for us. You can actually see that the height above the water starts to increase here. So you can see that this is sloping upwards relative to this here, and it gets higher and it then drops back down again. You can see it sloping down here. These breaks are due to the fact that Google has obviously needed to stitch images together, and the stitching across these is not able to line things up absolutely perfect. You can imagine these are taken from a boat which will be moving around in the water. Very, very difficult to get the causeway to line up absolutely perfectly all the way across. But you can see that it starts to slope back down again a little bit further up here. So if we exit our street view and slide back up again, I'll take that off because it gives us a slightly better slightly better view, and the shadow width stays consistent all the way along. Until this point here, where there's quite a marked step up for a structure to allow taller ships, and this is actually a swing type bridge or a hinge type bridge that opens up and allows taller vessels to get through. And again, if we pop down to our street view, we can see how much higher this has become. Unfortunately, we've got Google Earth people in the boat, or passengers or whatever, but you can see the causeway coming along here and sloping up to a point where it's very obviously much higher than, and here's where the boats would go through, very much higher than it has been previously, and then it slopes back down again and then starts to levels out and trails off into the distance. So this is what we're actually looking at. This is what we're actually concerned with. Now, the length of the hang on a second, that's the wrong line. The length of the elevated or sloping up and then down section is this line here, which is, I've measured as just about 0.8. It's 0.8 of a mile or thereabouts. You could maybe argue it starts very, very gently here and here. It looks to me like it starts at about these points and finishes at about these points. But say between 1 mile and 0.8 of a mile. And the length, the whole length of the causeway from this point back to the start, which I measured with this line, is nearly 8 miles to here. So we're talking about this being about 1/10 of the total length. So that's a little background so that you can see what we're actually looking at. And now let's see what the images actually show. So the Lake Ponchartrain, here's a still just to show where we are again. And this is a view that Soundly has taken from one of his videos. And we are taking a shot with a P900, as he says up here, Nikon P900. And this is very, very, very zoomed in. And you can see the what appears to be a distinct curve if you follow these structures on the top of the causeway. And here is the part where it slopes up, and here is where it continues on that level with this part. Yeah, so it curves up, it curves down, and then continues to slope away. And there's a very, very great difference between the shape and the height of that curve there than this line here. This structure that we see here is not the continuation of the causeway. It is the, we showed it before, it's the bridge to allow shipping through has a structure that juts out into the water, and this is zoomed out. This is increased in size because it's zoomed in here. Now, Ranty is trying to claim that the curve of this sloping part of the causeway matches exactly what the curve of the Earth would be. And he's forgetting that the road has first curved upwards and then curved downwards, and so the curve is going to appear to be really quite different here. And we can draw a curved arc along here, or probably better and more appropriate would be to actually draw some straight lines. And if we put some straight lines on here, we can see exactly what is going on. Now, if this structure were on a flat surface and completely straight, what we should see is that each of these the pylons, foot of the pylons here, the top of the signs or whatever they are, boards on the causeway, the road level itself, this line here, all these lines actually exist on the picture. Yeah. And if we gone the wrong way, if we put the lines on, you see on a flat, if it was a flat surface, then they should continue in a straight line to a vanishing point that would be somewhere here. And all those lines following those straight lines, yeah, all would end up there. But what we actually see is that every single one of them is straight at the start and then gradually starts to curve away. And this curve here that we're looking at, that I'm highlighting with my pointer, is occurring well before we get to the elevated portion. So to suggest that the curve is due to this elevated portion and the drop afterwards is just not true. The elevated portion is here, it goes up and down. You can see these whatever they are, signs or boards of some sort that jut up. They're jutting up here and going back down this side here. Then the whole thing levels with the water, but the water is actually sloping away, and so the bridge actually slopes away. I don't think there's any doubt about this, but let's have a look at a few other pictures as well. So perhaps the easiest way to show what we're looking at here is to play one of Soundly's videos and have a look at that. This is the most zoomed in shot from the very start of his Pontchartrain Causeway 6 video. And you can see clearly the hump up and down. Remember, we're zooming in here from a distance of over 8 miles away, and we're looking at 0.8 of a mile from here to here. Is obviously very condensed. And when you actually watch the video, you can see cars very slowly climbing up this slope. This slope looks very steep on the video, but in practice it's obviously not very steep. It's just that the whole thing is foreshortened by, guess what, flat earthers? A bit of perspective. Anyway. So as Soundly zooms out, we get to the shot, or similar shot to the one that we were looking at before, and you can see this very clearly, the up and the down and the continuation of the causeway beyond and the area here. I have a feeling that what we're looking at just here is the other area of slight elevation in the causeway, in the bridge that I pointed out earlier on. I can't double check that really. I can't think of a way of confirming that for sure, but I'm pretty sure that that's what that is, and that gives you an idea of just how much of a foreshortening we're looking at here because of the zoom. So here we are zoomed out a little further, and perhaps it's even clearer. The straight line from here would continue off into the distance, here. You can see the rise and fall, and then the continuation of the same arc that we have before we get to that part of the bridge or the causeway. The traffic up here appears to be traveling very, very slowly, and it's easy to consider that these structures are very close together, and that there are just pylons running down here which are very, very close together, just a few feet, few short feet, maybe 1 or 2 feet apart. In fact, they're spaced out by yards, and so are these structures, as we can see from the Google Earth Street View. If you look closely, you can see cars traveling up and over this bridge here, and then they would travel back down the same height to here, and then the curve continues into the distance. So the Lake Ponchartrain, here's a still just to show where we are again, and this is a view that Soundly has taken from one of his videos. And we are taking a shot with a P900, as he says up here, Nikon P900, and this is very, very, very zoomed in. And you can see the what appears to be a distinct curve if you follow these structures on the top of the causeway. And here is the part where it slopes up, and here is where it continues on that level with this part. Yeah, so it curves up, it curves down, and then continues to slope away. And there's a very, very great difference between the shape and the height of that curve there than this line here. This structure that we see here is not the continuation of the causeway. It is the, we showed it before, it's the bridge to allow shipping through has a structure that juts out into the water, and this is zoomed out. This is increased in size because it's zoomed in here. Now, Ranty is trying to claim that the curve of this sloping part of the causeway matches exactly what the curve of the Earth would be. And he's forgetting that the road has first curved upwards and then curved downwards, and so the curve is going to appear to be really quite different here. And we can draw a curved arc along here, or probably better and more appropriate would be to actually draw some straight lines. And if we put some straight lines on here, we can see exactly what is going on. Now, if this structure were on a flat surface and completely straight, what we should see is that each of these the pylons, foot of the pylons here, the top of the signs or whatever they are, boards on the causeway, the road level itself, this line here, all these lines actually exist on the picture. Yeah, and if we gone the wrong way, if we put the lines on, you see on a flat, if it was a flat surface, then they should continue in a straight line to a vanishing point that would be somewhere here. And all those lines following those straight lines, yeah, all would end up there. But what we actually see is that every single one of them is straight at the start and then gradually starts to curve away curve away. And this curve here that we're looking at, that I'm highlighting with my pointer, is occurring well before we get to the elevated portion. So to suggest that the curve is due to this elevated portion and the drop afterwards is just not true. The elevated portion is here, it goes up and down. You can see these whatever they are, signs or boards of some sort that jut up. They jut up, they're jutting up here and going back down this side here. Then the whole thing levels with the water, but the water is actually sloping away, and so the bridge actually slopes away. I don't think there's any doubt about this, but let's have a look at a few other pictures as well. So this is another still of the Pontchartrain causeway or bridge, and this is taken from between the two carriageways. So the carriageway we were looking at before was on the right hand side off shot, and this is the left hand carriageway. And that again from Soundly's Causeway 4 video. And once again we see, if we follow the line of the water, we come to the horizon and the structure beyond appears to curve down away from us. So this line here, this is one of the cross bridges, not the one near the elevated section, but the first of the cross bridges. And as we can see, this now starts to curve down and disappear beyond the horizon. This line of lighter colored concrete here. And more importantly, if we place some straight lines, so these start out straight, and it's very easy to draw a straight line. We actually see where the horizon vanishing point ought to be if the water surface level and the lines of the bridge were actually straight. So the horizon line should be somewhere here, but in fact what we have is a horizon line for the water, which is here. And these lines are placed as accurately as I can, following the first 3 or 4, and then simply extended that line out. These are just straight lines. Obviously there's slight irregularities here in the height of the concrete, but that's a pretty good guess for a straight line to start with, and they all go to roughly the same point in the distance. They all converge on that point, and another line drawn from here would do the same thing. We're missing the start of this, so it'd be inappropriate to draw a line here which wouldn't quite cross that. What is clear is that actually the curve begins long before you get to the horizon. You can actually see that the water is curving away. So although we can visualize and see everything that is in front of the horizon, in this picture, and in the others that Soundly has taken, what is tremendous is that we can actually visualize the water curving away from us. It's curving downwards from where it should be if it were flat. And this is actually true of all pictures taken where you have a dead straight reference line across the surface of the water. The beauty of lakes like this is that they're pretty still and pretty flat. Over the ocean, the waves make life a little bit tricky to do this sort of thing. But here we see, and remember that we're talking about miles of distance here, not a few feet or a few hundred yards. We actually start to see the water curving away at, I would vouch, 8 inches per mile, or thereabouts. So this picture further confirms what we already knew from a whole host of other sources that the Earth is indeed curved and that water does follow the curve of the Earth. And the often stated claim that the natural physics of water is that it does not form a curve around the outside of objects is an utter lie. The natural physics of water is that as a fluid it will respond and change its shape according to the forces that are acting upon it. And that's why the surface here is rippled. It's rippled because of the action of wind and other forces upon it, causing it to alter its shape and to change its shape. And if there were no forces acting, it wouldn't change its shape. Because of gravity, water changes its shape to fit the surface of the Earth, and it curves. Once we reach the horizon line, we now can't see the curve of the water anymore, because all of this water here is exactly the same distance away from us, and therefore has curved away from us in exactly the same amount. So we lose the curve of the water here, but because the bridge is constructed so that it's the same height above the water for most of its length, we can still follow the curve of the structure itself away into the distance. So in conclusion, I'd just like to restate a few points. So these were the power line. This is one of the power line images showing that what starts out as an apparently straight line here very rapidly becomes obvious is a curve, and the water, if you stood on the water's edge and looked straight ahead, the water would constantly be curving away from you. Now, it doesn't appear that way in our eyes and in the camera. It appears to sort of rise up the two-dimensional image that is created, but in fact the water will be curving away, and this illustrates exactly what is happening. So the curve doesn't start here at the horizon, guys. It starts way back here. So you watch this, look at this line here, and the footings here for the pylons start to appear below the line as you get further and further away. More and more and more of the footing appears below the line. Here is the former watermark and the former watermark, and now the line is on that watermark. Yeah, and then further on we see the pylon, the footing post, and the watermark here, and it's further curved away. That curve begins before we get to the horizon. At the horizon in this image we have some mirroring and we have some miraging effects which are very obvious. Makes it very difficult to interpret exactly what's going on, but looking up at the top you can see the curve is continuing on beyond. And it doesn't matter what line you take, what part of the structure you take, it starts out curving away just a little bit, but gradually it gets more and more and more until by this distance it's very obvious. It's curving away. If the Earth were flat, then what we should see is that these continue in a straight line all the way to a vanishing point here in the distance. And that doesn't happen. It curves away because the Earth is curved. And here is another image, which I think we looked at earlier, showing the same thing on the causeway. So Ranty and your friend Anthony, there's nothing to do with the electricity that's flowing through the cables that are on those pylons causing the curve that we're seeing. The curve occurs on structures that are not carrying any electric current. And again, if we continue those straight lines at the start, or almost straight, well, these are straight lines, but the straight lines on the bridge will be very slightly curving away all the time, but put a straight line in, and everything goes to what should be the horizon vanishing point if we were on a flat plane. And we're not on a flat plane. The horizon vanishing point is a blockage of light caused by the rise of the water or the fall of the water away from us. Again, as you look here, straight lines heading off. This is a shot taken from between the two parts of the causeway. So this is the old part, I think. And again, you see the causeway curving away in the distance here, horizon here, but the curve starts before we get to the horizon. Curve is clearly visible here, falling away, falling away, falling away. And were this a flat plane, we would expect the water to continue to be visible all the way up to this point here where it would meet the causeway, but we don't see that. We don't see that. We see it curving away. So finally, if anybody's interested in I'll put this link in the video. There's actually, somebody's done a video where they actually drive the length of the bridge and the causeway, and you can see the landmarks. You can see just how long it is, and you can see the spacing between the road signs at the side of the road and the crossways that are there for breakdowns and sort of managing the bridge. So have a look at this. I'll put a link to that in the description. And Ranty or Anthony, I'd be very interested in hearing your opinions of what we're seeing here with the road going up and down and then continuing on. Thank you. And just to conclude, as a credit, I'd like to thank Soundly for the wonderful images that I've used in this video. He's done an absolutely great job taking pictures of the bridges and power lines at Pontchartrain. So well done, Soundly. Thanks very much.